The local stock exchange will stay open during severe weather conditions starting September 23rd. The older form of the Hong Kong Smart ID card will lose validity in stages. And Premier Li Qiang wraps up his Australia visit in Perth before heading to Malaysia. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Hong Kong's stock market will stay open during the typhoon signal number 8 or above when the black rainstorm warning signal is in force starting September 23rd. Chief Executive John Lee said the new arrangement is set to help maintain the city's competitiveness as a global financial hub. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange and Clearing, or Hong Kong X, will continue trading amid severe weather conditions from September 23rd onwards, ending the decades-long weather arrangement policy. Chief Executive John Lee said the new measure is a catch-up with standards in global stock exchanges.
Other securities markets around the world, such as Shenzhen and Shanghai, they maintain trading even under severe weather conditions. Hong Kong is the only exception. Hong Kong is an international financial center, and there is no reason for us not to align with international standards.
He added that most transactions are done electronically these days, and that could help cement Hong Kong's competitiveness as a global financial hub. Stocks and derivative products can be traded as usual during typhoons at or above the typhoon signal number 8 or the black rainstorm warning. Trading of A shares through the Shanghai Hong Kong and Shenzhen Hong Kong stock connects will also proceed despite the weather alerts.
In terms of potentially power outage or whatever. So already, currently, even without this severe weather arrangement, there are already sufficient contingency arrangements through our regulators and our financial market infrastructure to deal with that.
Financial services sector lawmaker Robert Lee said the industry is geared up for the change. He said the policy has been discussed for some time and the industry has been working to overcome technical issues in the new arrangement. Some residents welcomed the new policy, including Mr. Wong, who said the suspension of trading often causes economic loss. Amid the severe weather conditions, using phones or computers to buy and sell stocks requires stable remote trading and work systems. Brokerage firm Bright Smart Securities said they dedicate more than $10 million each year to their online trading system, and most of their clients have online trading accounts, including elderly ones. They said trial runs will be conducted before the official implementation of the new arrangement to ensure a smooth operation. Sources say there will be a 3-month grace period for small and medium-sized brokerages, which have concerns over the lack of technical infrastructure to operate under the new arrangement. More details about the grace period have yet to be announced, pending the government's final decision. The Immigration Department has announced that the old form of the Hong Kong Smart Identity Card will lose validity in stages starting May next year. Mimosa Ngai reports.
A new form of smart Hong Kong identity cards has been issued to replace the old ones since 2018. The Immigration Department said there are currently more than 118,000 people who still have not got their new ID cards. Speaking to the press today, the department announced new arrangements to replace the old form of smart ID cards. The arrangement will come in 2 phases. In the first phase, individuals born in or after 1970 who hold an old ID card will not be able to use it starting from May 12, 2025. The second phase is focused on people born in or before 1969. Their old ID cards will stop being valid from October 12, 2025. As to why a significant number of residents have not changed their ID cards, the department said the pandemic is one of the reasons.
The replacement exercise we commenced in 2018. And then very soon in 2020, we faced the pandemic. I think there's a lot of disruption in the international travel. So I think many residents have not been able to back to Hong Kong to replace their ID cards.
Dai said now is a suitable time for authorities to end the validity of the old generation of the ID cards.
We completed in 2023, the March 2023, but we postponed the invalidation until now. Because nowadays we found that the replacement rates have reached about 90%. We are feeling more comfortable to make the invalidation order now.
Thai said holders of the old ID cards who wish to enter or exit the territory after the replacement period will have to use their valid passports or other types of travel documents. Moons 9, TVB News.
Multiple flights were still delayed today after an incident occurred on the north runway at Hong Kong International Airport on Monday. The runway was temporarily closed. Chief Executive John Lee said the government will work on their contingency plans for such incidents. One day after the north runway incident, some flights were still affected. The airport authorities said they handled the departure and arrival of 40 planes between midnight and 4 a.m. The incident happened when an Atlas air freighter burst a tire, affecting the north and south runways. Chief Executive John Lee said today he is glad the incident was handled safely. South Korea's military fired warning shots after North Korean soldiers crossed the military demarcation line near the border this morning. Last week, South Korean forces also fired warning shots after around 20 North Korean troops briefly crossed the border. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, or JCS, some 20 to 30 soldiers breached the line by 20 meters inside the demilitarized zone Tuesday morning. They moved back north after warning shots were fired by the South. Yonhap News Agency reported that JCS does not think the breach was intentional. An official told the press North Korean soldiers also suffered multiple casualties due to the explosion of landmines while conducting various activities along the front line, including planting landmines. South Korea's military is closely tracking the North Korean military's activities in the frontline area. Premier Li Qiang wrapped up his Australia visit today in Perth. He inspected 2 local enterprises in critical minerals and clean energy and attended a CEO roundtable meeting before setting off for Malaysia. A former Australian ambassador hailed Li's visit as a critical step towards the normalization of trade between the 2 countries. Danny Zhou has more.
Critical minerals and clean energy took center stage on the final day of Premier Li's Australia visit. Beijing has been tightening its grip on these 2 sectors as Washington tries to break its supply dominance. Perth is the capital of the resource-rich state of Western Australia, which supplies over half of the world's seaborne iron ore, and China is its top customer. Li first inspected a clean energy research facility of the world's 4th largest iron ore miner, Fortescue, where he had interest in the technology to produce iron ore without carbon emissions. He later toured a processing plant of a Chinese-controlled venture, Tianqi Lithium Energy Australia. The firm produces battery-grade lithium hydroxide for electric vehicles and is expecting a level playing field for investors in getting tax incentives. After the visits, Li and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese attended the 7th China-Australia CEO Roundtable. Li told business leaders representing key resource companies that China will take major measures to deepen reform and steadily expand institutional opening up. He also stressed that 2 countries' economic and trade ties should be placed in the context of their comprehensive strategic partnership. China and Australia have inked a memorandum of understanding to further promote the implementation of the Free Trade Agreement from 2024 to 2025. And Western Australian Premier Roger Cook also announced plans of direct flights and energy transition cooperation with China. A former Australian ambassador said Premier Li's visit marks a return to normal Australia-China relations.
I don't think we're going to see a big surge in new trade because many of the tariffs have been now removed. But again, we'll go back to conducting our trade on a normal basis under the terms of our free trade agreement. And in that case, commodities such as barley, timber, they will have a duty-free access to the Chinese market, as will Australian wine. And so hopefully from now on, the trade relationship will be governed by the arrangements that have been agreed to by both sides under the bilateral free trade agreement.
Danny Zhou, TVB News.
And still ahead, Reform UK's Nigel Farage pledges border control and tax cuts. Former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra granted bail on charges of insulting the monarchy. And some cross-border buses going from Hong Kong to Western Guangdong will use the new Shenzhen-Zhongshan Bridge and shorten their travel time. Welcome back. Nigel Farage is hoping his anti-immigrant manifesto can make a splash. Polls suggest his Reform UK party will take only around 15% of the vote in next month's UK general election. The two main parties dismiss Farage's noise. Conservative leader Rishi Sunak and Labour's Keir Starmer said there are simply two choices. David Garrett with more.
Keir Starmer campaigning where rival Rishi Sunak grew up. The coastal city of Southampton is traditionally Labour. Rural areas can be Conservative or Liberal. Port workers asked the Labour leader if his government would consider returning to the EU after Brexit back in 2016.
We do think there's a better deal to be had. Obviously, that'll have to be negotiated. It does not mean going back in, but it does mean an improvement on what we've got for businesses. I think there's scope actually for improvement in other areas as well, on defence and on security, and on development and on research and education, etc.
Well, guess who's back? Back again.
A man who was at the centre of Brexit, Nigel Farage, has taken charge of right-wing group Reform UK and says his party can be a credible alternative to Conservatives and Labour. Reform UK says it would push migrants back to France.
I've said from the start, this should be the immigration election. I have no doubt about that. I think the population explosion, the impact that it's had on people's lives, is the dominant issue. How can you discuss NHS waiting lists without discussing the fact that the population has risen by 6 million people since David Cameron came to power back in 2010?
Reform promised to immediately freeze non-essential immigration and leave the European Convention on Human Rights.
They've even interfered recently with the Swiss government, telling them they have an obligation under international law to maintain net zero policies. Well, the Swiss government have decided to ignore them, but we think the only way to really fully restore sovereignty, to decide who can come in, who can stay, is by leaving that European Court of Human Rights.
Farage's economics could badly affect those relying on benefits. Reform would increase the tax threshold to £20,000 from £12,500, reducing benefits to cut income tax. At this food bank in East London, organisers say those in need are coming in record numbers and need more help.
I personally doubt it. I've kind of given up hope with these politicians and them understanding the common people, the working class people. I am kind of fed up that they won't take the time out to come and see what it is that we're doing.
The choice on July the 4th is a choice of two different governments, one of them Conservative. We've had 14 years of them, chaos, division and failure. People are feeling that, there's a human cost to that, or turning the page and rebuilding the country with Labour.
Starmer dismissing Reform as a serious threat. One single poll had Reform ahead of the Conservatives last week. In the latest surveys, Labour are ahead of both by 20%. David Garrett, TVB News.
Former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra avoided pre-trial detention after being granted bail today on charges of insulting the monarchy. Thaksin sped away in a car without speaking to supporters or media representatives. His lawyers backed the court's decision and said their client will clear his name when the case is heard. The 74-year-old was indicted earlier. Thaksin is still an influential figure despite being ousted from power in 2006. He voluntarily returned to Thailand last year and was convicted of corruption, but served most of his sentence in a hospital rather than prison. He was granted parole in February. Defaming the monarchy is punishable by up to 15 years in prison. Some say it is used by the government to silence critics. With the imminent opening of the Shenzhen-Zhongshan Bridge, some cross-border bus companies said most of their routes from Hong Kong to Western Guangdong will go through the bridge, and that's set to shorten the journey time by nearly an hour. The Shenzhen-Zhongshan Bridge is poised to open after 7 years of construction. Currently, most travelers reach Western Guangdong via the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge or the Humen Bridge. With the new bridge, travelers can save about 40 minutes when heading to Jiangmen, Zhaoqing, and other nearby cities. It costs around 60 yuan to cross the bridge, cheaper than the tolls at the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. This year's Chief Executive's Award for exemplary performance has been given to the Task Force on Basic Law Article 23 legislation.
They rebutted and refuted mudslinging arguments, and they have spared no efforts in taking forward this task, and they are the heroes.
The Chief Executive's Award for Exemplary Performance scheme was launched by the current term government in 2023. It aims to give recognition to teams or individuals in the civil service. Last year, the accolade went to SAR rescue teams who supported earthquake relief efforts in Turkey. The government said the Task Force on Basic Law Article 23 legislation did a significant amount of preparatory work for the legislative proposals. They took less than a week to conduct an analysis of over 13,000 submissions received, with detailed replies to more than 1,000 questions raised by lawmakers. They proposed 91 amendments after studying their views, the government said. The government criticized the Shenzhen-Zhongshan Association for harboring the former leaders of its board who are wanted for fraud. The new board of the group issued a statement last week, saying they have cut ties with Jacob Lam and Almond Chan, who resigned from their roles earlier. In a strongly worded statement today, the government said the new board refused to recover the money transferred overseas by the two fugitives. This, the government said, reflected their lack of intention to help the teachers and students of its subsidiary boarding school, the Shenzhen-Zhongshan College, which helps young drug addicts. The government also said the new board has been in office for 2 months and has not proposed a concrete solution to the problem. The administration said law enforcement agencies will follow up on the case. Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Soon proposed to increase the labor importation quota for residential care homes in the next 3 years to 15,000. The existing quota is set at 7,000. Writing on social media, Soon said many care home operators said they have insufficient manpower. He said authorities have handled 3 rounds of applications related to the importation of carers. Nearly all 7,000 quotas were approved. The government announced a series of measures to reduce smoking last week. Henry Tong, chairman of the Hong Kong Council on Smoking and Health, said on TVB's Straight Talk program that not only does smoking hurt people's health, research commissioned by the council said it also places a heavy financial burden on the city.
The social and economic cost to Hong Kong was 45 billion Hong Kong dollars per year because of smoking behavior. By reducing the number of smokers in Hong Kong and by improving Hong Kong to be a healthy city, a smoke-free city, would not only help the healthcare system of Hong Kong, but also help the economy of Hong Kong.
Tong said the city's smoking prevalence is now at 9%. He said he is optimistic the government can reach its target of 7.8%, while the committee's target is 5%. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.